Well, good evening, folks. I hope you're well. Please forgive me having a cup of tea. Um, Second one of the day, I might add. This evening's video it's going to be in two halves, really, because I don't want to bore you stupid for the first half or the second, so we'll split it in two. Um, I'm doing this video with a little bit of trepidation. Um, Only because potentially I could get my channel banned. But it's an important topic because we often wonder why does history repeat itself? And this is where we're headed. History is indeed repeating itself as we speak. And I want to, it is a very dodgy subject, okay, because it'll become clear as to why I worry about such things. Because I think it's terribly unfair the way that a certain group of people on this flat plane that we live on are favoritized, and some are vilified, of course, but it'll come clear. I think anybody in Western society, certainly, I mean, it's a worldwide thing. There was a guy called, here we are, Charles Dickens. And he was an author, wasn't he, Charles Dickens? And he wrote a wonderful story. And in fact, he wrote many wonderful stories, didn't he? Pickwick Papers and these sort of things. And one of the best, of course, that every child really should read and understand, and is shown every year, quite frankly, is called A Christmas Carol. And what that is a portrayal of life in the Victorian times in the streets of London. And it wasn't a nice place to live in the Victorian times unless you were very wealthy. It was London. It was a real den of iniquity, and there were the haves and have-nots and the very, very poor. There's no middle class folks, not really. It was those that have and those that haven't, and those that had a lot, and those that haven't had very little. So I think we all got the story of the Christmas Carol, but for those of you who want a reminder, it's where they have a chap who's trying to bring up a house full of children and on very meagre means. Yes, he's got a job, so he's not exactly scrimping and scraping on the street, but he's not far off being on the street. But his house is very meagre. His three children are ever hungry and need feeding and clothing, of course, and the wife is doing her best with what she's got. They all love each other dearly, and it's happening at Christmas. It was leading up to Christmas time, and they're making the best of what they have. The poverty, they're making the best of the poverty, really, and scrimping and scraping, at least just to put the children first and make sure they have a happy old Christmas. But with this inevitable thing about not having enough money for the food, not having enough money to feed the children and clothe the children properly, this is the parents' number one priority, of course, which it should be. And it's all about life in London and how difficult it was, because the head of the household in this particular household, he was working for an accountancy firm. Yes. Scrooge, Mr. Scrooge, he was working for, wasn't he? And Scrooge had a business partner as well, these two Jewish gentlemen. And naturally, they're in the world of lending money, money lenders. And now you see why it's a difficult topic. And it's a story where all throughout towards the lead up of Christmas, the Ebenezer Scrooge, the main guy, the Jewish moneylender, accountant / he was a notorious tight ass, really. He had, bar humbug. This was his favourite phrase. He was not interested in Christmas. It was a pain in the ass because it meant the suspension of commerce, which will cost him money, you know. But he had no Christmas spirit. There was none of this. And he was unrelenting, and he worked this poor man who was trying to support his children to the bone, and resented even giving him his wage, as minuscule as it was. And there was no play in him. He was serious. He was, everything was about the money, my boy, and bloody Christmas bar humbug, and because it was a few days wasted when he could be making his money and his profit from his shekels, if you like, but not shekels in London, but you know what I mean. And then obviously the partner from the accountancy firm, the fellow moneylender, dropped dead on Christmas Eve, and came back to and saw the error of his ways, that he didn't have the Christmas spirit. But he came back and haunted Ebenezer Scrooge and showed him and took him back in time in a dream what it was and what he's got and what he's been doing and where it's going to lead to his future when he does die himself, because he's been going to hell if he didn't change his ways and become more Christian in his outlook towards other people and be more generous. And I'm sure you remember the story, but all the time he made the guy who worked for him work till the 11th hour of the 11th minute of the 11th day, and right, you can go home now and have a nice Christmas. Bah humbug. And this poor chap went back to his children, and it was Christmas Eve, and it was that's the only time this poor sod got off to work to go to spend some time with his family. So in the meantime, Ebenezer shuts up shop and gets his nightgown on, as they do, and Ebenezer goes into this dream on Christmas Eve. And this is all from my sad mind. I'm missing a few key points, but I'll make the point. When he's in this dream, he's visited by his partner, who's in chains, and he looks so miserable, and he's saying, look what's happened to me, and if you don't change your ways, this is going to happen to you, and yada yada yada. And it put the fear of God, quite literally, into Ebenezer, who woke up on the morning of Christmas and was so relieved to realise that it was all a dream. And he was so happy that it was a dream. It changed him. But it also frightened him into absolutely believing it, that if he didn't change his ways and got the Christmas spirit. So when he looked out in the morning and just to confirm that he was still alive out there in the fresh air and the snow falling and everybody's wishing everyone a happy Christmas, Ebenezer decides to do a Christian thing and buy a big turkey off a young man and send it round to his employee's house as a big present. A big turkey. Might be a duck, but probably a turkey. Anyway, and Ebenezer spent a fortune and gave money away, and it's never been there. Everybody thought he'd lost the plot. Okay. Because until that point, everybody hated Ebenezer Scrooge. Now I want you to remember that little story, because everybody who was associated with Ebenezer Scrooge prior to him being so generous and having his rebirth, his epiphany, they hated him too. Okay. Now then, whether he's Jewish or not is academic. It was his actions, wasn't it, that got him there, into this form of hatred amongst the others. And all the others wanted to do was to enjoy Christmas with him. Anyway, so he rather changes tune at thelastminute.com. Okay. But I've often wondered, and I'm not being anti-Semitic here, when I've looked at what's happened in history, in the way back in history, from the very beginning almost, that I can recall, why Jewish people have been vilified and seem to continue to be vilified. When you look at what has happened to them in history, where they've probably been kicked out of so many countries time and time and time and time again since they were wandering around. I'm not singling out singling out indiscriminately. I'm just basically saying Jewish people have been persecuted on the face of it. When you look at the evidence, since time began, and to this very day, the word persecution we'll come to. And I look back and I think, well, what is it? What is it? You see, a lot of the people, they look at the history books about what happened to them during the war. The people living today perhaps some of us can recall what happened in the First World War and the Second World War, but the Second World War in particular. But that was a real turning point, a tipping point. But historically, even before the First and Second World War, Jews have been kicked out of countries time and time and time and time again. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that. And it's provable in history. You look at the way these people have been, this is why they were homeless, the wandering Jews, and they had no state of their own, did they, apparently? And, come the Second World War, of course, look what happened with the Nazis and all this stuff at the concentration camps. And after the concentration camps, the Nuremberg trials happened to see who was accountable for the atrocities, the alleged, I should say, atrocities, many of them, that were simply not true historically, but they were, inflated, or, they were jazzed up or sexed up, should we say, to be more repellent than they actually really were. And figures were inflated up about the number of people allegedly gassed in Auschwitz, and all the other nonsense that goes along with the arguments that happen between those who are pro-Jewish and those who are not, and the Anti-Defamation League. So I'm not going there, but I'm just trying to get in your mindset, in your mind, people concentrate, don't they, at the actions of what happened to fundamentally, although it wasn't just the Jews, what happened to them in Auschwitz and the other concentration camps. There was close on to, from my understanding, limited that it is, close on to 1,300 such camps. It wasn't just Auschwitz or Treblinka. There was close on to 1,300 concentration camps full of such people. And it wasn't just the Jews, as I said, it was the criminally insane, the deviants, the deserters, the unpalatable people, these people. It was everybody, and including the mentally retarded, the Down syndrome, severely disabled, whatever. They were just stock in these camps. And I suppose some people would call people like that useless eaters. Henry Kissinger calls non-Jewish people and old people useless eaters, doesn't he? And yet he's a Jew, Henry Kissinger, and he has the temerity to call other people useless eaters. I can't think of a better example of a useless eater than Henry Kissinger, quite frankly, this warmongering war criminal. Allegedly. Anyway, let's move on to that. So, no, what we do, what history does in the newspapers and the media, of course, they concentrate on the atrocities of what the Nazis did to the Jews. These bastards, these German bastards were so cruel to the Jewish people. They burnt them, they gassed them, they ill-treated them, they worked them to death, and yada, 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 because everything is geared towards the propaganda of getting and generating Jewish support, because everybody's got to feel sorry for the Jews. But let's not forget, it wasn't just the Jews in the concentration camps. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? And I got to thinking, well, okay, everybody's really concentrating on, somebody has to pay. This can never happen again, yada, 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 yada. And now, even in modern times today, everybody is, becoming again anti-Jewish. And it's all very suppressed. There's a lot of closet anti-Jewish people. And I'm not Jewish. Okay, I'm indifferent. Okay. But even now, we know. Okay, the question is, why are we so obsessed about what is it that, why did the Germans do that? The Germans did that, the Germans did that, the Polish did, the Jews were hated by the Germans did this, and yada, 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 yada. But let's not, nobody seems to ask the question, do they? This is the question. Since history began to today, okay, and whatever happens in the middle, right, that's a long time. What is it about that particular race of people, not an individual, the particular race of those people, the Jews, that how come it's always them that are picked on? There's something really strange. What is it? I mean, country after country threw them out. Country after country after country after country threw them out. They're not going to take any more of this shit out. And this were the wandering Jew. This is why. You see, what is it about them? Look, I'm not going to be honest. I've got to be honest. I know about the atrocities carried out on not just the Jews, but others in the concentration camps. I get it. Okay, I know. All right, but even today, what is it now that this anti-Jewish thing is suddenly raising its ugly head again, with the synagogues and all this stuff being blasted and people starting to hate? This generation of haters towards the Jews is increasing again and again and again. We have the Anti-Defamation League set up to smash anyone who criticises, condemns or complains about the Jew. We got to smash this in. Okay, yet they're all too busy, but nobody seems to stand back and say, whoa, okay, we understand about the victimization and the vilification of Jews. We get it. It's not nice. It's not nice what's happened from the start of history to the current date. It's not nice. But ask yourself, what is the common denominator? Well, it's the fact is they're Jewish. Okay, and that particular group in history are time and time and time and time again get to a point where countries say, get out, or you're out, go. Because there is a tipping point where certain people will say enough is enough. Countries will say enough is enough. Okay, but now we're being censored by the anti-fascist, being anti-Semitic, yada yada yada. But ask yourself why. This is what I'm asking you to do. Why is it? Why did people hate Ebenezer Scrooge? It wasn't because he's Jewish. It wasn't. It didn't even in the Christmas Carol that Dickens wrote. It was never mentioned that Ebenezer Scrooge, who was such a bastard, was Jewish. A lot of assumptions were made. Well, he's a moneylender, he must be Jewish. Yeah, okay. And everybody hated him with a passion. Okay, it wasn't a fact. What made the Germans, or Hitler and Goering and Goebbels and all this, what made them hate Jewish people so much? There has to be something. And even now, it is well known in this century that we live in. Switzerland. Oh, it's banking. It's all about the money. Okay, you could say the banking. Yes, the Jews, the Rothschilds. It's all the Jews. Okay, I get it. It's not the fact that it is well known. It's stupid of me to deny it that Jewish people are into banking. They're into anywhere. They're very good. Is it because why did the Germans kill them and hate them so much? That's the question. What was it about the race that non-Jewish people despise them for so much? Why? Well, the point is then that was made. I want to make a point here. As have you ever considered now, even today, the music industry, the media, the arts, the televisions, the record labels, Hollywood, the banking, everywhere there's money, it is predominantly now, all these systems worldwide, like a spider's web, is controlled by Jews. Now, that is not being anti-Semitic. Everybody knows, and it's generally accepted, that Hollywood is run by Jews and funded by Jews and owned by Jews. And the same, anywhere there's money, well, perhaps it is. The reason people don't like them is they're jealous. Okay, what's the other reason then? Perhaps it is that Jews will only employ Jews in preference. Well, there's a lot of theories about this. Okay, and as I say, I'm indifferent. This is purely throwing this out to you to decide and have a think. It's not that they're Jewish per se, as Ebenezer Scrooge found out. Because what turned the table on people accepting Ebenezer Scrooge was Ebenezer Scrooge became charitable towards others, less than himself. Now, is it because maybe Jewish people are better at handling money? Maybe they're far more intelligent than the average Goyim, that is the non-Jews, Goyim, they call us Goyim. Goyim are one step away from animals on the farm, or we're less, non-Jewish people. This is in the eyes of the Jews, non-Jewish people are called Goyim. Okay, that's one step below cattle, because they view us as cattle, or one step below, it's Goyim. Can't be done for defamation on that one, it's very true. This is how they think, behind the scenes. All right. So, when Ebenezer changed his tune and become a little bit more charitable towards non-Jews, the non-Jews accepted Ebenezer and changed their tune about him. And it saved Ebenezer's bacon, really, excuse the pun. Shouldn't mention bacon. Freudian slip. But everyone accepted Ebenezer. Now, he's seen the error of his ways. He's now accepted that he's no better than everyone else, and he's got the Christmas spirit. And when you look then, and this is what's got me to thinking, is why would it be easy for an SS officer to stand on the edge of a pit and point a gun at a perfectly innocent person who just happens to be Jewish and shoot them in the back of the head with a Browning 9mm pistol as she holds her child? Tragic, hellishly bad thing to do. And yet what motivated the hatred in that German? Do you think is that German had been brainwashed over years and years of witnessing that Jews will only employ Jews? In essence, what they're trying to say is the Germans, to answer the reason why that the Nazis had such a hatred towards them, particularly as a race, was that they are perceived as greedy. And unfortunately, right or wrong, that's what the perception was. That they have been slung out of country after country after country because they are like a cancer. It's like if you suddenly get a spot and it's infected, metaphorically, a Jewish family move in. And then suddenly another one comes here and another one comes here. And if a non-Jewish family want to move that way, they say, no, this is a Jewish area. It's only for Jews. You've got to be Jewish to get in. And they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And fundamentally, the body is infested with a takeover. And before often this is recognized when it's too late. They've got it. And this is what's happened now, isn't it? With the media, the BBC, the press, the publishing, much of the internet, Harvard University, Yale, all the big institutions are fundamentally money driven and controlled by money. Well, who controls the money? You've got it. And now you understand, perhaps, it's not the fact that they're Jewish that people despise them. It's the behavior that these people adopt when they become protectionist en masse, to the exclusion of those who have helped them get where they are a lot of the time. But once they get to critical mass, they despise those people around them that are not Jewish. And yet it is the people around them that got them there in the first place. They are better money managers. And that's perhaps the Western faults, that we are so stupid. Jewish people may be far more intelligent, maybe, as a race, better money managers, better tacticians. But it also seems to be their agenda to take over the world, and haven't they just? And again now, they're in fear of it happening again, that there is a turning of the tide. But maybe it's too late. The people who are running the media and Hollywood and the films and the paper and the books and the publishing, and a lot of the time the internet now is being censored like crazy, and people are being listened out for the slightest anti-Semitic comment, and then they're sued and vilified and crippled for life because These people are protecting their position. But they've been protecting their position since time begun. And they will be protecting their position in the future. Because the one position they want is that upon the world's population. And that is elitism. And the only elites, folk, will be the Jewish people. They will run this world if they're not doing so already. They don't really have to have their night, do they? Like Ebenezer Scrooge, to see the error of the ways, because they don't care. They've got past that point now, because they've got past the point of critical mass. They've reached critical mass of dominance on this world. And the Goyim have been so stupid, we never saw it coming. It's too late. It doesn't matter, quite frankly, whether you're anti-Semitic or not. It doesn't. It matters to the Jewish people, but it doesn't matter to anyone else, quite frankly. But it's not on an individual basis. And this is what happened in Germany. Germans woke up and saw it happening and decided to put a stop to it and get rid of them out of the country. Hitler gave them plenty of opportunity to leave of their own volition. Okay. And they didn't go. I'm not saying it was right or wrong that they should be kicked out, but maybe, you see, it's the greed factor. People just don't dislike things just because they like to dislike things. There has to be a reason. But the strange thing about anti-Semitism, and it begs the question, is it truly justifiable? And if it is, even the Jews are clever enough to understand that in most cases, it is entirely justifiable when one looks at the actions and the vindictiveness that the Jews are capable of carrying out certain vindictive atrocities towards the Goyim, the non-Jews, because they employ themselves and their Jewish brethren. They promote over everybody else someone who's Jewish, not on merit. They are self-protectionist in the extreme. And you could say, well, of course they are. Look what happened to them in Germany. That cannot happen again. No, but it happened 1,000 years ago, again and again and again and again. You know, you've got to ask yourself sometimes, if you keep doing the same thing time and time again, the result will be the same time and time again. The Jews are being persecuted from day one to the modern day now. So what's the common denominator? What are the common denominators? The Jews and their selfishness and greed, and their wish to control and dominate those who are not Jewish, with little regard to the outcome of that domination. Because fundamentally, folks, humans weren't designed to be selfish. We're a collective Borg, and there is no room for mavericks who want to control the world at the expense of all the others. It's like having a rogue colony of bees that want to break away and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then kill or dominate the primary colony that helped them get there in the first place. So, just putting it out there, why is it that Jews are hated so much the worldwide by the Goyim? Well, because they're cleverer, or they're just poor little victims as a race, not individual? Or is it because they have an agenda to control everything they come into contact with, and they are self-serving, and they will lie, cheat, beg, thieve, steal, corrupt, and manipulate, and cheat in order to get it? And when Rothschild said, when he was asked, how much is enough? When I've had that little bit more. And do you know what? They don't care whether that little bit more comes from you or another non-Jew. But they will rarely, if ever, take it off another one of their own. They get there at other people's expense, and they are greedy. They won't share, and they have to have, if they have to force to share, they won't give you the lion's share. They will always want control. Is that being anti-Semitic? No. It's being subjective of the evidence that has been going on been amassed for thousands of years to the current day. And all I can see, and all others can see out there, who are indifferent to whether it's anti-Semitic or not, because anti-Semitism has nothing to do with Jews. Okay? Nothing. It's an absolute scam. If you knew what the word Semitism means, you would see that it has nothing to do with the Jewish people. The ones that are passing themselves off as Jews in this world, and lots of them in the power merchant game, are not Jewish. They're Khazarian. It's like chalk and cheese. And there's some wonderful Jewish people who have been tarred with the same brush. And that's the tragedy. The innocent ones that paid the price, demanded. They throw the baby out with the bathwater all the time. If the means justifies the end, and enough to get that little bit more. The 1%ers out there who want to take over this world would sacrifice their Jewish ancestors to get it, because the 1%ers are the ones that are supreme greed, because there's never enough to satiate them. Because what they need is a night when they experience exactly what Ebenezer Scrooge experienced. Or history will indeed repeat itself. As sure as God made little green apples. Charles Dickens was trying to say to the Jewish people out there, you better change your ways or this is going to happen to you. And Charles Dickens wrote that as a warning, A Christmas Carol. And they didn't listen, did they? And look what happened. Ebenezer woke up in a nightmare. And they still didn't listen and take note of the story behind the story that Dickens was trying to say to the Jewish race. Change your ways, otherwise you're going to end up in chains. just like Marley. And yes, purgatory. And that is heading, trust me, the wheel will turn full circle and we'll be back to where we were in 1939 if we're not careful. Who will be to blame? Because people will get sick of Hollywood, they'll get sick of the music industry, the arts, the media, the press, the publishers. People will say enough is enough. But the 1%ers then will be ensconced in Switzerland and behind locked doors, far away from the maddening crowd. And those that are left outside, even the straggling Jews, will suffer the same consequences as all of us. Dickens was telling a story of the future. Catch you all and have a good evening.